Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our budget meeting, which is today's date is February 12th, 2025. And we are the Amityville Union Free School District. At the meeting at this time is myself, President Lisa Johnson, First Vice President Harold Seehoff, Second Vice President Megan Messman, Trustees Leslie Kretz, Chris Searing, Caroline Banning, as well as Wendy Canestro. Also is our Superintendent, Dr. Kamina Talbot, Assistant Superintendent for Construction, Mary Stevens, Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Dr. Bridget Wade, Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operation, Ms. Olivia Watson. The time was 5:33 when I opened up the session. At this point in time, can I have a motion to go into executive session at 5:34? For advice from counsel regarding particular persons, correct? Regarding particular persons. And that's advice from counsel as well as discuss matter related to a particular person. Can I have a first, please? So moved. Second. And I'll see if it's first, we'll request a second, all those in favor? Aye. Motion carries 7-0. We will resume open roughly at 11. Thank you.
Now at 7:45. At this point in time, please note where the emergency exits are. And can you kindly silence your cell phones? And please join the Board of Education in the Pledge of Allegiance. At this point in time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Dr. Talbot.
Good evening, once again to our Board of Education, any colleagues who are present, and our community partners. Thank you for joining us as we kick off the presentation of our budget overview for the 25-26 school year. Now I have the clicker. So we'll go to slide 3. Our goal with this fiscal plan has been clear from the start: to balance the vital needs of our student scholars and the community while strictly adhering to the state mandated tax levy limit. This budget, which is a first round draft, reflects our ongoing commitment to high quality education, one that not only focuses on academic excellence, but also nurtures the overall development of our students. It is designed to support a well-rounded educational experience, from co-curricular activities and enriching field trips to the critical upgrade and maintenance of our district's facilities. This budget was developed through a conscientious and inclusive process. Beginning in October and November of 2024, our facilities director, along with head custodians and building principals, conducted detailed assessments to gather and prioritize facilities requests, with a special focus on items that ensure health and safety. Excuse me. At the same time, our central office team engaged directly with building principals to review staffing needs. Our assistant superintendent for finance and operations also diligently projected contractual labor cost based on our collective bargaining agreements, while ensuring that all grants funded positions were accurately analyzed and segregated from the general fund budget. In December and January, further meetings with building principals and directors allowed us to fine-tune our departmental budgets. The newly formed CBAC, Citizens Budget Advisory Committee, met during the fall and became engaged stakeholders in the budget discussion and soon-to-be development process. They received a copy of the first round draft budget earlier this week and will collectively offer their recommendations to the Board of Education in March. Looking ahead, I want to share our detailed budget development calendar, which will guide us through the coming months. So tonight you are receiving budget workshop number 1, which is an overview, and we'll talk a little bit about the main budget drivers in the proposed draft. On Saturday, March 1st, we will walk through the line-by-line budget presentation, followed by 2 budget workshops during the month of March, focusing on the revenues and highlighting the tax levy limit calculation. In April, we will review with an anticipated adoption of the budget, as well as the adoption of the property tax report card. On May 7th, our budget hearing is scheduled, and May 20th, we will conduct our annual budget vote and election. So today marks the start of this rigorous process, and I'm confident that our careful, stakeholder-driven approach will result in a budget that responsibly allocates resources to support our student scholars and community. So I invite you to engage actively during this session and throughout the upcoming workshops as your insights are valuable to refining the plan. With that in mind, please join me in welcoming our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Ms. Mary Stevens, who will present the slide on instruction, followed by Ms. Olivia Buatsi, Assistant Super for Finance and Operations, who will present an overview of the first round budget draft. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Talbert. So I wanted to speak to you a little bit about some of the enhancements we're anticipating in the area of instruction. If you are not familiar with them, our STRIVE programs service students with autism. Students' placement in the STRIVE program is based on their diagnosis and psychoeducational testing, but it's driven by their IEPs. During the budget development process, Ms. Lopez shared with us her projections for the number of students who will need to be scheduled for STRIVE programs in the next year. She's anticipating the need for 3 additional STRIVE classes during the 25-26 school year. And in looking at the current staffing and anticipated shifts in the STRIVE classes, Ms. Lopez anticipates that we will need to hire staff for 2 additional STRIVE classes. So based on students who are moving in age groups or moving to different programs, she thinks that she'll be able to staff 1 of the classes with our existing staff, and we would need staff for 2 additional classes. If we don't keep our STRIVE services in-house, we would then need to find a way to finance out-of-district placements for those students to meet their needs. The next bullet, you'll notice we are planning a new role providing oversight to the CSE process with a particular focus on IEP development and writing, which will align the elements of the district goals for ensuring fiscal stewardship while also ensuring that all students have the necessary resources to meet their needs. The person in this role would balance student advocacy with compliance and ensure that each IEP was crafted to provide what students need to be successful in least restrictive environments. The next item on our list is a speech teacher. We are seeking to add one speech teacher to our staff. This professional would provide support for the additional STRIVE students with the need of speech services on their IEPs, and their full-time status would ensure that we're no longer outsourcing for speech services. We see the value in supporting the social and emotional needs of students and actively pursuing alternatives to suspension. Restorative practices in schools focus on building a positive school culture by promoting accountability, repairing harm, and strengthening relationships among teachers, students, and staff. These practices offer an alternative to punitive discipline approaches like suspension. By focusing on restoration rather than punishment, restorative practices contribute to a healthier school environment where students feel heard, respected, and responsible for their actions. To support this initiative, we've included in the budget 2 social workers, one for the middle school and one for the high school. Their roles would include building strong relationships, preventing and addressing conflict, and will result in improving behavioral and ultimately academic outcomes. Finally, we've added a band teacher to the budget. This addition would allow us to restore some of the music programs that were eliminated last year. As a result of current staff sharing, the ability to provide lessons has been impacted at Park Avenue, the middle school, and the high school. Additionally, some music electives were eliminated. The additional staff member will allow us to thoughtfully and purposefully restore our music programs. And finally, in the area of operations, we are looking for an accountant to be placed in the business office. Thank you.
So, what are our main budget drivers this year? Every year when you go through the budget process, certain items, certain expenditures come to light that are really stand out, and you would see throughout this process that there are 1 or 2 things in this budget also that drives the whole budget. The 25-26 budget is currently at $124.9 million. This represents 6.12 or $7.2 million increase over the 24-25 budget. But there are 2 items in the budget that are interfund transfer that will be covered on the revenue side of the budget. This includes the debt service for the library. I'll be shedding more light on that as I go along. And then, if you recall, the district auditor recommended that we transfer $570,000 from general fund to the capital project fund to cover the shortfall in the bond project, the 2016 bond project. So what are we talking about when we say top budget drivers? Contract transportation is one, followed by the 2 new STRIVE classes that we are planning to set up next year: health insurance, charter school enrollment, and employee retirement system. The Amityville Public Library reconstruction is funded by a bond secured by the school district on behalf of the library, because the title to the land that the library was constructed on belongs to the school district. and therefore they cannot issue their own debt. The school district has to do it on their behalf, which we already did this past year. And both the interest and principal are due. That will go on for about 17 years. In the 25-26 school year, we have only the interest due. Subsequently, we'll have to pay the principal and interest as we go along. And the debt service payment for next year will be $598,000. But the library will fully pay the district back. So it will be a wash on the district bucks. The same with the interfund transfers. We have balances that remained in previous capital projects that have been completed. Those balances will be transferred back to the general fund as interfund revenues to cover the $570,000 shortfall in the 2016 bond account. The total amount of the library debt and the interfund transfer is about $1.2 million. That will come in as revenue on the district box. So if you net it out, you are talking about, it's not a 6.12% increase, but it decreases it by a whole basis point, and I'll get to that as I go along. So what is the main budget driver that I'm talking about? We have to issue an RFP for transportation services. Transportation services are mandated by the state. And every 5 years, we are required to issue a new RFP. The RFP that is expiring was issued before COVID. And as most of you know, at that time, a lot of costs were much, much lower than we are experiencing now. So we are anticipating a higher trend in the cost or when we issue the RFP. So we have to prepare for it. If you look at the budget increases, this is the budget increases in all, the entire budget increase next year. You can see that transportation alone has the highest delta in this graph. So we are anticipating, based on the conversations we had with other school districts, that this is going to go up significantly next year. What are the other budget drivers? Increases in the cost of student services, and that is what my colleague, Ms. Stevens, mentioned in her presentation. That is the 2-stripe classes, the TAs, one-speed teacher, as well as the restorative practices teacher, that social workers that we are planning to hire next year. Then we anticipate an increase in the cost of retirement system, employee retirement system. The employee retirement system is the retirement system for our support personnel, which includes our custodians, our clerical workers, our aides and monitors. And that is established by the controller of the state of New York. And next year, they anticipate the cost will be 16.5% of payroll, which is more than a 1% increase from the previous year. Health insurance. This year was a lucky year, but health insurance rates come on a calendar year basis. So we know what we are going to pay from July to December. Come December, they'll give us a new rate for the 2026 calendar year. And we don't know it yet. So we have to anticipate that cost. And we are projecting a 10% increase. And this is based on the prior 4 years. We were looking at an average of about 12% increases in the prior 4 years for health insurance. This year, the average is going to be, the average is 2.54. So that's a really significant decrease, but we don't know what it's going to be in calendar year 26. Charter school enrollment is another area that, as you know, we saw it in the appropriation status report. We currently have about 64 students in the district in charter schools. So we have to project and anticipate any additional cost. And when we get the transportation request around April 1, we are going to double check this number to find out whether the number ties to the projected number that we have. This will cover the additional $200,000 will cover about 8 additional students next year. And charter school cost goes up and down. When we started this fiscal year, we were anticipating a negative number of about $255,000. As of last week, it had gone down to about $95,000 per our accounting record. General liability, commercial property, all those insurance costs are going up mainly because of the Child Victim Act. School district and all school districts are paying the cost of those reimbursement they gave to people who file claims against school district, and all of us are bearing the cost. Building management system is an area that we have to look at very carefully. Our building management system allows our building system to work together. Right now, we don't have a very good system, and what we are planning to do next year is to upgrade our building management system. We hope that with that, we wouldn't be having some of the cold in some of the classrooms that we have been experiencing the past year. We also want to address the public address system at Northeast School. When you talk from the main office, sometimes you cannot hear it in some of the classroom, and this is something that needs to be addressed. We've postponed it a couple of times, and I think this needs to be addressed as soon as possible. Then we are planning to replace the roof on the concession stand at the high school. This is also long overdue. So, what is the budget to budget increases? This was what I was referring to with transportation. If you see the budget increase, the projected increase for transportation alone here is about $3 million. So when I said that was the main budget driver, this was what I was referring to. Other areas is special education, instruction, and security and building use, as well as the items that I just listed a few minutes ago. Building management system and the PA system all are included in the $617,000. Then we have the debt service here, as well as the employee benefit of $778,000. If you deduct the debt service for the library and interfund transfers from the increase of $7.2 million, you come up with a budget increase of $6 million. Of this amount, $3 million alone is towards transportation. So what are some of our budget highlights? Co-curricular clubs, we are bringing it back to the 23-24 levels. field trips, we bring in field trip back. We talk about restorative practices, mass interventionists at the high school, and then we all know about Northeast schools. When it comes to the revenue side, we still do not have all the numbers to project our revenues because our state aid revenue, the initial state aid projection was proposed by the governor. That is simply a proposal. The final state aid proposal will be released by the state legislature around April 1. At that time, we will get the final state aid estimate and will be able to accurately project our revenues. We depend on state aid. Our state aid is about 35 to 40% of our budget. And therefore, any impact, any changes in state aid has a very, very significant impact on the budget. So the next workshop, as Dr. Talbert alluded to, will be the line-by-line budget, and that will be on March 1. And we'll be going very much detail, and it will also be tied to the budget drivers that we just talked about. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Watsi. I think there's a few questions by some of the board members. And I think that we all just need to keep in mind as we move forward that on Saturday, March 1st, that will be a long period, that will be a long morning. And so please, I think it's 9 a.m. that we're starting. And so please come, with your questions and suggestions as we go through the line by line. So I go ahead, Ms. Canestro.
Thank you to all central administration for the presentation. I do want to acknowledge the teachers that are here that have the interpretation devices in the back. I love that. I'm wondering if Dr. Talbert, if there's a way to advertise this a little bit better for our budget meetings so that we can get our English not speaking parents and guardians here maybe. Is that something that we could push out maybe through Parent Square so that they know that they'll be able to understand what's going on? So thank you for being here. Okay, I have a couple of things on this. First, I noted about the budget development and, everybody that held meetings about this and so forth. As you'll note, the board wasn't on here. We weren't consulted with or asked what we wanted to see in here or not. Certainly, we could do it at these meetings. It would have been more collaborative if we did this before. As far as the Citizen Budget Committee, we only got minutes on that once. Is that something we can get so we could be apprised of what's happening
Yes.
with them? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, something that I had asked for multiple times was to share the anticipated tax levy cap that we'll be putting, knowing that it may change if there's any adjustments with the budget. I noticed that it's not on here, which is the norm for a lot of districts to share when they do their budget presentation. I'm wondering why this was not shared.
As I said, because we depend on state aid for 35 to 40%, the governor's budget proposal did not show any significant increase in state aid. And we anticipate that our state aid projection will change. And that has an impact because you take the entire budget, you take out your state aid, you take out all your miscellaneous revenue, and that is what the tax levy typically is within the 2% cap. So unless we get that number firmed up, it will be given incorrect information. And we are required to file it within next 2 weeks anyway.
Right.
And I'm doing it.
So here's the thing. Most districts do share that, knowing and explaining to the constituents that it may change. I think it speaks to transparency. It does have to be filed with the controller by March 1st. So that is something that we should have. Our anticipated tax cap levy. I think more now than ever, our voters and our residents would be interested in that because they're going to be hit with the equalization increase and the tax levy cap. I am very interested in our tax levy cap being lower. And if we're saying that there's a budget to budget increase of 6.12%, what would you be basing it on unless you know what the anticipated tax cap is? So we have the figure, we're just not really sharing the figure because it may change. For transparency's sake, I would like that shared.
Sure, we'll work on it and share it.
Well, do you have it? Can you share it now?
No, I don't have it now. I've been working through the numbers because there are some variables. Because certain things happened last year. In fact, we called council this afternoon to clarify one or two things. So we have to be very sure about it before we share the numbers.
Right,
What
so
we
you
can-
will share it with us. then?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just going to try and move
Can
through.
I ask something on
So-
that topic? Sure.
Mhm.
Okay, if I ask something on
So
it.
let's let Ms. Canestro finish and then.
All of her-
Okay, I'll just go quickly. I do like when you said the social workers for restorative practices, we got the survey results back. I think it speaks to what people want. I know that I've certainly said that we tend to be very punitive. I would rather us be restorative. I'm happy to see that, that was addressed. As far as, you know, all this special education, this hasn't been presented to the board before that there's such a focus on that, so I was surprised to see this. As far as the transportation cost and the RFP, so this came up that, you know, we had to stick to our mileage and our transportation per policy, but when I had asked for a policy, there is no policy. Then I asked for a certified copy of the referendum that the voters voted on to change the statute of the statute from New York State for transportation, and that wasn't provided either. So here's my concern. My concern is you can't change the statutory mileage without voter approval and a referendum, right? So if we've had this, and it's been done, I think you said for over 10 years, by what authority? The authority is of the voters, right? So that's been done incorrectly, which I understand is before your time, but I'm just saying that.
Mhm.
So have we been giving away millions of dollars in transportation without the voters' approval? Of course, the way to correct this is to have a referendum this year. If there's enough time, I think it's 60 days before the vote to correct that. The statute is more than 3 miles for grades 9 through 12, and the statute is more than 2 miles for grades K through 8, right? And the reason you do for a voter referendum is you want to make sure that it's equitable across the schools, right? One parent in one school wouldn't be in favor of it being less than the other. I think that has to be corrected, but my question to you is, the RFP, on what mileage is the RFP based on?
It's based on the current practice.
That's a problem.
Yes, but we are reviewing it and it hasn't been released yet. So it's something that we can look at.
Okay, because, I think one of the things that I enjoy being on this board right now is really, I feel like this is a course corrective year, right? So we're trying to course correct the district, move it forward, work together to try and get things back on track because they were off the rail. So when I identified that issue, now we have to correct the issue. So I'm not sure how we could go out with an RFP without the voter approved referendum. It would seem, and I would ask that you consult counsel, that we would have to go on the statutory mileage. And then if we change it, I mean, I'm not sure. Legal's not here. I thought they were going to be here.
No, they're not, they weren't staying. for this
So
one.
that's that. So I think that plays into that, and that's going to be a huge part of it because the transportation you're saying is 25 to 30% increase, but we have the wrong mileage. And also, as far as transportation costs goes, I know that we do for Northeast, it's not mandatory transportation. The one question I have is about safety for 3 and 4-year-olds on a bus with no booster seats or anything. They're very little on a bus. So Dr. Talbert, is that anything that we've reviewed or can we
All right,
review?
so we'll
A
take,
four-
we'll take
four-year-old?
the question, and then from that point, it may be
Okay.
something she'll have to get back to us on, so therefore we'll be able
Well,
to.
hold on a
I mean,
second.
But I'm just saying to, she may be able to answer, it, she may not be able to answer. But go ahead,
Okay,
Dr.
let's give her the opportunity.
For 3 and 4-year-olds on buses, they're required to have car seats and or boosters as well as safety belts, and we do comply with that.
All of it?
Yes.
Okay, great. Excellent. Okay. So I'm sorry, let me just go on to this. So I see that I went through the line by line budget too. So I'm not sure I'm in line with everything that's being, presented, but, there are some things that are being presented, and my question is this, like, we're bringing in new positions, but we accessed a ton of teachers. Our students were impacted by that. Resulted in larger classes, some course offerings that we had before, we don't have now. And it would be beneficial to try and bring these teachers back to the benefit of our student, right? Student achievement should really be the driver of a lot of things. What are the plans to bring back any excess to teachers?
So just very quick, just one quick question. So Wendy, with Wendy's question that's being asked, and Dr. Talbot, when you come to answer it, just kind of add to that, would that be part of the March 1st line by line that we would have that discussion in terms of, bringing teachers back, not bringing time? That's just my question. So as you answer that question, I'm just adding.
Well,
to the question.
I just think it's a budget meeting, so this is a place to ask questions.
No, I'm not
Okay.
questioning that. I'm just saying, I'm just
Okay.
asking, will that also be part of the March 1st? That's all I'm asking.
In terms of bringing teachers back, it's based upon enrollment numbers as well as course offerings. And as we have looked at the numbers, as we all know, there was overstaffing last year due to teachers being in grants and having pre-COVID numbers at that time. When the numbers decreased, the staff stayed on. So our class numbers on the elementary level do not warrant any additional staff on the elementary level. In terms of our students with special needs, we have been peeling back the layers and analyzing cost comparison as to whether we should host programs in district or outsource. And when we look at the cost on both ends, adding those Strive classes in-house is a savings for us, as well as our program gets great reviews from parents and who have their students enrolled.
Right. It's
in
always
those
great if
programs.
we could educate our special education students in-house, if we could provide those services.
Yes.
Something that I know that we've brought up before is I think we need a director of IT. I didn't see that budgeted for. I think we need a dean at the middle school. I didn't see that budgeted for. I appreciate that you want to do the social workers and the restorative justice. I think it's great, but I also do think that we need a dean there. I'm almost done. The charter schools, I just want to talk about. You allocated $200,000 and you said it was for about 8 students. Am I remembering this incorrectly? That I thought it was an increase of about 17 students this past year? So aren't we under budgeting then? If we had 17, why would we only budget for 8?
Just go back to the mic. Thank you.
It wasn't 17 additional. When I think it was about 10 additional. So what with the budget, we brought the number to this year's level and added 8 more.
Okay.
You brought it to 64 and added 8 more.
Okay, I'm almost done, sorry. Northeast upgrades, I think there's about $220,000 in upgrades to Northeast. My question about Northeast is Northeast budgeted for and covered in this budget? Do we have money to cover all the expenses for Northeast without an infusion from the state, without getting money from elected officials?
It's in the budget. But
Do we have the money to cover it?
any additional funds we get will be helpful because at this point, we do not know how much state aid we're going to get. So any bullet grant that we get will be a big help.
Okay.
Because we don't know how much state aid.
But I don't know that that answers it. Does that mean that there's a hole in the budget that we don't have enough revenue right now to cover the costs for Northeast for our whole budget? Because if we do have money, then we don't have to ask the elected officials. If we have to ask the elected officials, then we need the money, right? So I just want to get a definitive answer, because if we do, I know that we've been reaching out, soliciting, trying to get help from elected officials. My question is, what is the contingency plan if we do not get money from elected officials?
So the first round budget that is presented tonight includes the 4 pre-K classes and the staffing that was laid out for Northeast, with an increase of a 6.12%. So this first round budget, we've discussed deans at the middle school, necessary. We've discussed director of technology. We've discussed director of security. We've discussed director of curriculum. There are so many gaps that we need to fill in the district in order to be operationally functional and efficient and more effective. And we are making choices. So
Understood.
as we move forward on Saturday with the line by line, I'm sure there are items we're going to infuse, discuss, talk about the rationale for removing. It's an evolving document. And
But-
so.
Yeah,
thank
but
you for-
what is the contingent, because I feel like that wasn't answered. What is the contingency plan if we don't get money from elected officials? What is our plan?
There is no contingency plan. Northeast is in the budget.
So it's totally in the budget and
It's-
covered.
It's in the budget that you have. It is in the first round draft budget. It is in the, how much is the budget for this year? 124 million? It is in the $124 million proposed draft round 1 budget.
I have
So
two
I-
more questions, but Megan just wants
Can
to.
I just,
break
so I
in a
think
second.
that the missing puzzle piece is that we don't know what the tax levy increase is. But you have an estimate of what it is. So is what you are presenting to us something that is below the tax levy cap?
Is it below is it below the?
Because that will
2%,
answer the
6%?
question if we can afford to do everything that's presented in this.
I'm gonna let Ms. Pawati answer the question. Go ahead and answer the question, then I want to say something as well.
Yes. The tax cap has to end, just like we said, at the 2% mark. That's the highest that we promise we will do at this point in time.
So we're going to the
If there's
top.
a delta,
Let her finish,
if
please.
there's a delta, we have to wait for state aid to meet that delta. And then we have to go back and cut back to make the budget work. That's the plan.
So, so if I'm understanding this correctly, right now, our goal is to leave it, to get at the 2%.
Correct.
If it's above that, then as we do the line by line in the budget presentation, we have to look at what
Can
do
be
we-
eliminated.
What do we want to eliminate? What do we want to keep? Whatever positions that everyone's talking about, there may be positions that other people want to talk about. We have to decide, okay, they're making these recommendations of these positions. We may decide that, you know what, after hearing other options, after having discussions, maybe we don't want this position. We want another position. That's where the line by line budget
I
will go.
understand, but
Let me finish. So also, I think also what will happen is that if we don't get the aid that we hope we're going to get, then that means we have to continue to go forward and cut more. And that's how we do moving forward. But I also want to give some other board members an opportunity
okay,
to ask some questions. So
I'm just rounding it out. I just have two
But-
more things,
but just kind of heard, because you've been
I am.
for a
I'm
while, so other
almost done.
people.
I just want to say the governor came out and said if they abolish the Department of Education, that the federal funding is going to fall on the backs of state and local agencies, which would mean that it would fall on us. So I'm worried that this may come down at some point on us. So now we have the equalization increase. We may have that. We're not sure what's going to happen. And I would like to see the tax levy. I don't want to go to the max before piercing. I want the tax levy to be low. I don't want to overburden our taxpayers. And just the last thing, you had carried over expenses from the charter schools from 23-24 to 24-25. You carried over that we owed like $225,000 or
No,
something
no,
like
no,
that?
no, that's not it.
What it,
the $225,000 you saw in the appropriation status report in the 24-25 school year is our encumbrance. We are setting money aside this year based on the initial enrollment projection that we got from the charter schools. As parents withdrew their children from the charter schools, that's why I'm saying it went from a negative $255,000. And when you get the appropriation status report, in the next treasurer's report, you would see what I'm talking about.
Okay, and Ms. Biswatsi, the only thing that I'm going to ask for, we are 2 months behind on these budget to actuals. We really need last month's. So when we get the end of February, we have a meeting, we're only going to get December's. We should be having a month, just within a month. It should not be 2 months because we don't have in real time what our expenditures are and everything. So I would ask.
Let me
that we
just
get-
let
yeah.
me just clarify one thing. The treasurer prepares his report based on the receipt of his bank reconciliation. And the bank give you those statements at the end of the month. So when he gives us December, the December bank reconciliation are done in January. So the report that you're going to receive in December in the next month, the next budget and next meeting is for December because we are technically 1 month behind before he can do his reconciliation. And unless he knows his cash position, he cannot prepare his treasurer's report.
I've
That's
always
why-
gotten it. I've
that's
always
why-
gotten it a month behind, and the controller agrees it should be it should only be a month.
All right, so I'm going to
Thank
go
you.
to another trustee. Leslie, do you have any questions?
Wendy did a great job with so many. No, that's absolutely fine. Just want to make sure that we're budgeting enough for the charter school students. That was a big issue last year,
Yes.
that we didn't budget enough.
Yes, we are, that's why we are planning. As soon as the kids apply for transportation, we will get an idea as to how many kids will be going to charter schools. And we also have to be careful because there's a tendency for some parents to
To
withdraw
register late.
to register late
Yeah.
or to withdraw their kids, which
Right.
is what we are seeing this year.
All
And,
right, so please let.
and when will we anticipate getting paid back from the library? That's 600 grand.
We have been talking to them as soon as, because the amount is due July 1.
Mhm.
So immediately after that, we'll be going to the library to give us back the money.
Okay,
All right,
thanks.
Caroline?
Thank you, Ms. Boazzi. I understand if you don't know 30% of your revenue, it's going to take a while before you can get concrete numbers, but it is helpful to understand that you are presuming the 2% tax cap. Having read the slides prior to coming here, the notes that I made go back to Dr. Talbert, your presentation in August about your staffing priorities, who it's most important to bring back. And you had mentioned back in August, a third high school assistant principal, which we now have, and that's great. A director of ENL, another elementary assistant principal, the director of technology, and a full-time director of fine arts. So that was established now going 7 months ago. I'm sure a lot has changed. We know a lot more since then. But I too was surprised to see the emphasis on the Strive classes. You say that it's actually a cost savings, but in this presentation, you also list them as a budget driver. So I guess, it seems a bit of a contradiction. Is it costing us more to put the emphasis there, or are we?
It is what actually increases our budget. But if you have to compare with placing the kids, alternatively, placing the kids outside in another program, say BOCES program, it will be significantly more. And you have to tag on the cost of transportation, which makes it even significantly higher. So what we are saying, even though it is a driver for us, if we have to place those kids, the kids in a BOCES program, it's going to be even more cost. And that's the comparison that we're making.
So what you're saying then, as like a percentage of the students needing education, they're just more of them, therefore they get the priority at the expense of all the other priorities that were listed back
It is mandated,
August.
yes.
Okay. You had, Dr. Talbot, when you mentioned meeting with, building principals to assess their staffing needs, is it possible for us to see that? Like what each building feels like they need, more of? Do you have some sort of document or report?
That is an evolving conversation. So when principals come to the meetings initially, they come with a wish list
Mhm.
because they know what they need to outfit their building the best way operationally and academically for children. And throughout the course of the conversations, things are scaled back because we can only include so much in the budget. So those items are scaled back, whether or not we have official sheets, we have scratch outs, arrows, circles, back and forth, and then we end up with a document that says this will be included in the first round budget.
I think it would be helpful even to see that, which is more detailed than what we see here. Just like we, explained several meetings ago, seeing a draft budget or a draft budget to actual, we can handle the fact that things have chicken scratch and are, not set in stone and subject to change. But trying to keep abreast of what the needs of the district are, information like that, imperfect as it is better than nothing. At this point, all the survey results that we got from the 5 schools, very instructive, and, hearing things that teachers need more lead teachers. It just seems that there needs to be more support across the building writ large. And I just want to be confident that this budget, as it's being presented to us in its draft form, is going to put more of the staffing back where it's needed most. I understand we need to staff the Strive classrooms or, fund them, but so far, I just want to make sure we're not losing sight of the fact that we did lose a lot of people. Maybe we were overstaffed in certain aspects, but we need a director of ENL, so.
We do. We certainly do. That started out. That started out in our initial conversation.
Mhm.
It didn't make it to the next round. We're looking to see if there are grants, and we know that's sort of in a little flux right now. But if there are grants that could absorb that position, even today, we spoke more about support that is needed. September 2025, we need to have science and the science of reading at a certain level per SED's requirements. We're on track, but we need a layer between the school and an executive central office who are saying we're here to be able to support what's actually happening in the schools in terms of ELA, in terms of math. Do we want department chairpersons back? Certainly. One department chairperson may require us to have 2 additional teachers in that department to support the department chairperson. Those are the kinds of conversations and the ask and the thought exchanges that have been taking place between the stakeholders. And so then we rolled back and said, well, looks like we're going to have to go 1 more year with building level leaders, a stipend position until we can get enough fiscal solvency to go back and slowly begin to bring back department chairs. So the process has been very transparent since October from the ground up, and we're bringing to you where everything has settled at this point. But we can certainly talk more about what was put on the table initially. But as the executive management, we're bringing to you where we are now. And it's a lot. It's a lot. And
Yeah, I guess I would just like more info, more detail. And I know it's asking for more work, but because I want to be encouraged that, as progress is made, that we see that and understand, okay, we can't get back exactly to where we want to be in 1 year, maybe not even 2 years, but at least we're headed there. Because
So Maybe Caroline, would it be helpful, maybe like at the March 1st budget line by line, if that's information that's provided, during that time frame? Would that, not,
Well, I don't
not
want to
you.
hug Mike. I just want to
Yeah,
say,
but I'm
I
just saying,
would like
yeah.
to see more of like a matrix, as Megan said, of like what our staffing was, what our wish list is, and where are we in our journey from, getting from where we were back to where we want to be.
I don't know about back to where we want to be, but where we want to go,
Gotcha.
where we want to go. There was a time when we had 9 and 10 children in the classroom.
Mhm.
We can't afford that, so we don't want to go back to that.
I understand.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Carol?
you.
Mrs. Lopez, where did she get the information to anticipate the increase in Strive classes? How and where did the information come from?
Eric will come and provide more information, but these are all driven by CPSE decisions. So it's incoming students
Mhm.
in need of services.
I could just add the specific number for you. They're anticipating 22 students via CPSE who will require Strive placements. And then she did analyze which students would be moving buildings, which would change the structure of the existing classes. And she also analyzed who might be moving from a 611 placement to an 811, which would increase or decrease. So those changes helped her know what was necessary.
Okay, thank you. Another question. IEP facilitator. We have 2 administrators in our PPS office. We have school psychologists. Those are the people that have always written and facilitated the IEPs along with the special education teachers. Why do we need another facilitator?
We spoke about the need for oversight to make sure that the IPs were drafted with what we spoke about it a few meetings ago with what compliance is. So making sure that we're complying with regulations, but not over serving students, and that what's on their IEPs aligns with what their needs are. So there was a need for that additional level of oversight. That was our decision.
But shouldn't that fall upon the 2 PPS administrators as well as the school psychologists and who's running IST meetings, CSE meetings? I don't really see
So-
a need for an additional facilitator.
We did see the presence at the CSE meeting as the critical piece of that. We thought that that would be a leadership role, and that for the 2 administrators to do the rest of their job, asking them to be at every annual review was cumbersome, and that this extra level was going to support special ed in a way that they needed it.
Okay. And the last thing, I know that some of our board members are concerned about class size, but I do know that we are going back to pre-pandemic class size. I have to refer back to your presentation and the dire situation with academic achievement. Why don't I see more remedial staff included in this budget to address those needs?
So we did look at the reading teachers. I think I spoke at our last meeting about looking how they are district-wide so that we could make sure that we're serving students appropriately, looking at our MTSS plan, figuring out who needed tier 3 supports, and we think we're okay in that area. The principals did look at their data when they were thinking about staffing to figure out how they were going to move student achievement. And so that's included in some things that didn't require additional budgeting that we could just rearrange. So that was important to us, that we were looking at what we have, how we're using it, and where our needs are. So it is included in the budget, but it doesn't reflect an increase in
Okay.
staffing.
Because I have concerns. I know that you said that we're picking up students that are 1 year behind in reading.
Mhm.
And we all know that the evidence points to if they're a year behind, chances are the following years, when the curriculum compounds, they're going to fall behind even more. So I just really do see a need in additional remedial staff.
I know we can always benefit from additional staff, but in our analysis, we think that we'll be able to continue to support students and move their achievement.
Okay, thank you.
Chris?
Okay, mine's,
Oh, I'm sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
May I just respond to something as well? Thank you so much. As it pertains to our Director of PPS and Assistant, they are really responsible for special education, PPS, registration, and attendance. And it's a heavy lift. All four of those areas need dire attention. And as we are pulling back the layers, we're looking to see how we can provide layers of support so that we can appropriately address some of those runaway areas or areas that need more accountability. So I just wanted to respond about the IEP facilitator and why we are looking at that so that the director and assistant director can appropriately handle the umbrella that is before them with those four areas.
I understand that, but in the past, that has been part of their job performance, IEP facilitation.
And it is.
Yes.
And we are where we are today.
Thank you.
Chris? Thank you. Going to bring up again something that I had requested in the past and was brought up by other board members this evening on having a staffing matrix for the district so we know how many teachers are in each building for each subject, if the position is filling a vacancy or if it's a new position. And then on top of that, if we're adding positions, if you could build a business case for it. You can mention the educational impact, the total cost of it, if there's possible savings from the investment, as you stated, with the Strive teachers for bringing those students within the district. If it's a position that we had 2 years ago before positions were accessed. What else did I have?
Go ahead, Chris,
Can
please.
I go through? If it's a new position, what the student-teacher ratio would be following that. What the trickle-down impact would be, as you were just speaking about in the PPS office. You're saying that this new position would make these changes with these other positions. What else did I have? And if you could provide a comparable salary for that new position, either with a similar position in the district or what you've seen posted in other districts that would be comparable to it. And if any of this could be provided, or all of it could be provided by the March 1st meeting. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Megan?
But do we get an acknowledgement on the March 1st or do I just jump in?
Just go ahead, jump in and
Okay.
I'll let her come back.
Okay, so clearly, there's a lot of questions on this academic programs and operations. I don't feel as though we were involved, and I think that all the other trustees have expressed that very well. I am a little bit unclear. Are we assuming that we're bringing back students that have out-of-district placements? Just to clarify that, there was mention of 22 Strive students.
Some of those students have not been placed. We are now assessing it and evaluating it and saying it is better to have that program in district, because if it's going to cost, and I'm looking at it just from the finance pieces, 150 per student to send them outside, excluding transportation. If we have 8 students in a class, it is, when you do the cost benefit analysis, it will be better for us to have them in district than to send them outside.
I understand. I'm just wondering, are we assuming in the numbers that we're convincing students and families to come back, is my question.
No.
Okay.
This is CPSC, preschool education,
Okay.
22 students with IEPs that must be placed by the Amityville School District. Either we will place them in the district or we will place them out of the district. And
We're required to place the UPK students,
pre-K students,
pre-K students.
yes.
But, okay, but pre-K is not like a
Well,
required.
when you come to a CPSC, the student is maybe 4 years old. So
Mhm.
they'll be placed in a kindergarten, a 5-year, they'll be placed in a kindergarten class,
Mhm.
but they're going through the CPSC prior to next year starting. So these are students we are required to educate. We can't say no. And we have to figure out the best way to say yes based on meeting their needs.
Okay, thank you for expanding on that. I too, wondering about the prioritization. I don't want to repeat what others have said. Very interested to understand how decisions were made to present these as the roles that were going to be carried forth into the upcoming year so that we can better understand and weigh in on that decision process. How, I also don't understand if this is actually accounting for the survey results, so the feedback of the survey results, how that was incorporated into your budget process.
We wish we could have incorporated so much more. You did see the social workers for the restorative practices. One of our goals is to improve culture and climate, to decrease disruptive incidents, and to provide mindfulness and restorative practices. So one of our initiatives is district-wide to have our staff trained in restorative practices. We've had bits and pieces of it throughout the years and in pockets. And then to have these social workers being able to turnkey that and lead those initiatives in our secondary buildings with our staff as well as students.
Okay. Is there considerations of why we're not doing that at Park Avenue and Northwest too? Or
We
is it
would
we're just
love
hoping that
to.
it's trickling down?
Budgetary wise.
For as far as the $570,000 interfund transfer from general fund to capital project fund, I thought that we had the option to present a voter proposition that we reallocate capital project funds and projects that were closed out and funding that was available to offset that deficit that we're carrying in our capital project pot of money. So this budget is carrying money instead of the voter proposition.
Yes, we run it by council, and they said we can do either of two options. It's an accounting thing, and we can do either of those two options. Either bring it as a separate proposition, and if it's brought as a separate proposition, we have to go through the 45-day timeline. So
get it
if
on the
we
ballot.
put it through the budget, we don't need to do that.
As a
Okay,
follow-up
so-
is,
Oh,
oh,
hold on, let Megan finish, please.
well, it's a follow-up to that, but I
Okay.
don't want to interrupt if you're going to keep going, Megan.
Yeah, just let it keep going, please.
All right.
Thank you.
I don't mind. I mean, I would, it's more of a conversation, but, I guess I need to ask the Board of Education that we can consider on the 26th voting to proceed with a voter proposition it's a board decision to reallocate or to present this voter proposition to reallocate capital money that's sitting there to clear that deficit in the capital money rather than carrying additional money that's on the backs of our taxpayers to then move over to the capital.
No, it would not be at the back of the taxpayers, because there is the balances that remain in the capital project will come in as revenues, interfund revenues. One interfund revenue, one interfund expense, and they wash out. So either case, it will be a zero.
That was my question.
Right.
Yes.
It seemed like there's going to be two transfers.
Two
Both,
transfer,
like,
the revenues and then the
that
expenses.
cancel each other out.
They cancel each other. Thank
So
you.
on page 15, when you talk about the subtract the library debt and the interfund transfer. That's that
Correct.
1.1,
Oh,
and
right.
that brings it down. So
Correct.
we are
The same
utilizing
thing.
that money to bring down. the debt.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Okay, um, as far as the transportation, you said that we're required to put an RFP out every 5 years.
Yes.
Would it behoove us to put RFPs out every 2 years, every 3 years, so that we don't get hit with a 30% increase at the end of 5 years, and it can just more gradually increase because that's just what happens with things. It's gradually going up all the time.
Yeah, the reason why most school districts do the 5-year is CPI is attached to it. So within that 5 years, when we went out in 2020 to do the RFP, there was a clause in it which said the transportation company cannot increase the amount they charge the district higher than the CPI for transportation. So it capped how much you can do, and you can plan ahead for 5 years. If you decide to go back for an RFP every 2 years, you give them the chance to increase the cost. So it is always better to tie it in within a 5-year span than to do a 2-year.
Okay. Wendy already spoke to the distances in the RFP, and I guess in your number that you're carrying here. What about Northeast? We're providing transportation in Northeast, even though we don't have to for pre-K students?
Yeah, we have to review that with council one more time.
We have to
Right.
review it with council to confirm whether or not we don't have to provide transportation. I thought it was not, is it not mandated?
It's not mandated, so.
Okay, so the $3 million increase projection assumes pre-K transportation,
It
correct?
assumes pre-K transportation.
With the half mile.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The health insurance cost increase was 2.5% last year. I know you spoke to an average of 12% over 4 years. I know we spoke about this and ATA negotiations. Now we're going to carry a 10% increase. That seems like a little bit conservative considering last year was 2.5%.
I thought it was the other way around, but that's for the next, from January of 2026 to June of 2026.
Right.
Because we don't know what the rate is going to be.
Right.
And it just take another flu outburst or flu outbreak or COVID for the insurance companies, as you know, to increase the cost. And that is the second most expensive cost in our budget.
Okay. I guess I mean, it was 2.5% last year, and now we're going to carry 10%, which is almost $700,000 in the
You never
budget.
know. It's very
Just
difficult.
saying it out loud, I guess.
Yes,
The
yes.
board members can think about it.
Thank you.
Charter school enrollment, I agree, Leslie. We're only carrying an increase of 8. I don't know if that's enough. Last year was 17, did you say?
But, whatever projections we make, we always have to think about the cap. Because if I decide to go 20, it means that I have to cut back on something else.
Understood.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a priority list that can be shared from buildings and grounds? Because you point out a few. I'm assuming there's other building and grounds, but you point out just a few: the BMS and the PA system.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So there's been like a lot of heating problems, major boiler repairs in this building that we're sitting in. I guess I'm a little bit surprised that there wouldn't have been, bigger issues brought up from building and grounds.
Yeah. We list all that, but because, again, we have to think about other departments, instructional programs, we have to prioritize it and say, Is this something that we can defer one more year? This is exactly what happened last year with the PA system. We had to defer it one more year. So it's something that we look at, we make a list, and then we go through it 1, 2, 3 times to make sure that these things can make it into the budget or not, or whether based on the priority list, which is based on the health and safety issue, we can defer it one more year. And that's how we do it, because whatever buildings and grounds takes, somebody else will have to be put on the next level.
Okay, but similarly to, I guess, the academic prioritization, can the Board of Education please see the list of requests from buildings and grounds?
Sure.
Thank you. I understand Northeast is in the budget. Are we assuming there was options for revenue streams discussed at the Northeast presentation?
We're still
Community
rec-
presentation? Yep.
Yes, I think you are talking about the 4410 at this point.
Yeah, and then,
We're still receiving information from the state, and that has not been finalized yet, so it's
so
very
it's not
difficult.
included?
No.
Nothing is included, right? Okay. Okay, thank
No,
you.
I'm gonna go next. So I just a couple of clarifications, not clarifications, but questions. So on March 1st, when we go to meet, I know there's been some requests to get the list, whether it's for buildings and grounds, whether it's for academics. I know in the years ago, this is prior to the administration that was here, there was a time where we had building administrators in different departments that just came to the mic and they just shared their wish list, with the entire board. So, I mean, that has been, done in the past. That, once again, that was prior to the administration that's here now. I'm wondering if, and I know that we cannot ask the administrators to come on March 1st, but I think there was one year when we did it, that there were some individuals that were actually here. And so when we had questions, whether it was connected to building and grounds, for example, then they were able to kind of speak on their reasons as to why they wanted this versus they wanted that. So I'm just kind of sharing that information with you, and maybe that's something that can be considered to be done. Because we can get the list of what they've been requesting, but sometimes knowing why they wanted something over something else is also very helpful. So that's just
I
one
would love to hear
suggestion.
that at the February 26th meeting, just several days before, if that's not too last minute. Just like a presentation where we can take notes, because that would be more than what we have now.
Yeah, whatever it may be, I'm open to it, but it was, I know one time when we did it for the line by line, it was nice when they were actually here, because let's say, for example, if I said, no, I don't think we should do this thing, I don't think we should have this teacher or that do something with building grounds. When they were here, they were able to say, well, I hear what you're saying, but if I could actually have this, but maybe a little bit of that, that would be beneficial.
Yeah,
So,
but you're saying that they're not going to be around on Saturday.
no, I'm just saying, if you're correct, if they cannot come on Saturday, maybe it's something that can be done on the 26th.
That's like
if
the next
possible.
best thing.
Yeah.
Not ideal, but better than nothing.
Right. And once again, I mean, they could share it with us, but it doesn't they can share it with us. I'm just saying that at the line by line, it allowed more of that dialogue to take place. But at a meeting, it's difficult to have the dialogue. You're just getting the information and that's it. So I'm just making a suggestion as we move on. So we can either get the list, and then we can look at the list. If we have questions, then we can bring the questions back to Dr. Talbot, and then maybe those individuals could attend or they can answer the questions. So we can do it either way. If we can get the list, and then if there's questions, we can submit the questions in, and then that way they can maybe attend at one of the meetings. right? So go
I
ahead,
think-
Leslie.
I think I remember that we got a list, we had a presentation and a quick presentation, but a list of everything that the principals or directors wanted of each department or whatever. And then we went through it and decided, do you remember that? We decided what was accepted, what wasn't. It was difficult, but at least we had feedback,
It
so
was a long list of
it
things
was
that they
long,
wanted.
it was long.
And some of
but-
them would prioritize. If I really, really, really could get it, I prefer that. But so, I'm
Um,
sorry, I think
so
Wendy
is
said
that-
something.
Is that some?
I thought I heard Wendy.
Oh.
I was just gonna say, yeah, you had just touched on it, Lisa. If they're gonna come and present, I think that was a couple of years ago. I think I was at that meeting, I remember. Is just to prioritize what they want, what is critical, what they need. Because to Dr. Talbert's point, you know, when you're asking somebody what they want, they're saying everything. I mean, I would do the same thing. I want it all. So just to prioritize that. I just want to, confirm that you'll be giving the tax levy cap, the anticipated tax levy cap at the March 1st meeting. Is that correct? Okay. And then you're going to try and get this staffing information to us by March 1st, right?
Yes,
Okay.
we'll work on it. And then buildings and grounds.
Okay, great. And the other thing is with the 3 million increase, I was just listening to Megan, you know, if we're in a quandary right now because, right, we have to go to the statute because we don't have a voter referendum to change the mileage, but there is no mandate for pre-K for busing. So if there's no mandate for pre-K for busing, that saves $3 million. Okay, so we just did that, right?
But does it save the 3 million or
Yeah,
does it
that's
just
a
say?
save
How
3
much?
million.
How much do you
Very
save?
Significant, actually.
How much is it?
It's not
It's
going to
insi-
be,
it's
it's not
insignificant?
going to be very significant
Okay, can
because.
you get us that
So
figure?
I think at the line by line, that maybe that'll be something that could be brought
Yeah,
up.
that would be great if we could have that. The other
Yeah,
thing is,
because
for-
if,
yeah.
okay, we'll get you that
Okay, great.
information.
And then the other thing that I just noticed going line by line, just in anticipation of March 1st, I noticed that there wasn't a breakout by building of like the gas, electric, phone, and then there was another category, I think it was like garbage and carting or whatever. Can we get a breakout by building of that? Like it was just district-wide. Can we just get a
Yes,
breakout of
we
building?
bid it district-wide.
Why don't
It's
you,
a bid.
oh, you bid
We
it?
bid it
Okay, just, okay.
district-wide.
And then something
It's
that
93,000, right?
It was high, yeah, okay. The last thing that I just want to touch on, when we were talking about educating our own students for special ed, we kept talking about it's more cost effective to educate our own children. Do we have the resources that we need to provide a quality education to them in district? I understand it's cost effective, but can we provide these children every single thing they need for special education if we're going to do it in-house? I don't want it to be cost effective driven. I want to make sure we're giving them the education. And then if it's cost effective, great. Like that should be the priority.
We are particularly proud of the Strive program that we've developed. Other districts come, they look at it, they are always interested in following our model. So I'm confident in telling you that they are receiving a high quality education when we keep them, and that we do look at the programs we have and we determine whether they would be better served somewhere else.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you again for the presentation.
I think with Megan, I think it's Megan and then Chris and
I
then.
just have one thing. I agree. I would like to see the administrators here on the 26th to talk about their priorities and their buildings and their requests. Is that something that we have to, consensus on or like take a board consensus?
Yes, I mean, if the board wants the administrators to do a quick,
Yeah,
a quick
yeah, they
2
don't have
minute,
to go, right.
a quick 2 minute, just little list of what their priorities are, then that would definitely be helpful. But also let's keep in mind, are we going to give them, are they going to do the presentation and then we're going to, question them through and through. So, we just got to keep that in mind. So yes, if does the board want the administrators just to do a 2 minute, I'm
Brief.
just looking for something, a 2 minute presentation on their desires.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Talbot. If we can get that from the building administrators.
Okay,
Chris?
Thank you.
I just want to reiterate, because I feel like this would reduce a lot of the back and forth and questions that we keep asking about these positions, and just hoping that we get what I was talking about, having a business case for new positions and the impact that it'll have on everything, stating why we should have it and the cost and all that, because like a lot of these questions would be covered on something like that. And if you need me to read off the list again after the meeting,
That would
I
be
can.
great.
Yeah, okay.
Carol?
I just want to request when you present the instructional staff, you do break it down with special ed teachers, speech teachers, but could you also break down the remedial staff, reading, math? And I just want to say to my fellow board members, I understand that class size is important. However, speaking from experience as a longtime educator, if you really want to support a teacher and a student, provide the interventionalists in the classroom that are specifically meeting the instructional needs of the students' deficits. That's how we are going to increase our achievement.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Thank you. So, before I do, community input, we just have to amend the agenda to add, 2 items. And both are resolutions, so. What was that? Okay, I thought it was someone's, I'm sorry, I thought it was jewelry. So we have, 2 resolutions that we do need to add to the agenda, and both are, so one is we need to amend the agenda to add agenda item 2A1, which is a resolution that states, whereas the board received a complaint alleging the violation of district policies, by a complainant submitted by the individual identified in confidential Schedule A, and initiated, and another complainant initiated independent investigated by the complainant. And now therefore be it resolved that after due consideration, the Board of Education determines the complaint is not substantiated. And be further resolved, the Board of Education authorized the district clerk to advise complainant of the outcome of the complaint. So the motion is to amend the agenda to add agenda item 2A1.
So moved.
Motion.
I think I heard Carol Sehoff first. Oh, sorry, Caroline Fanning first, Chris Naren second. All right. All those in favor of agenda item 2A1?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, sorry. So that's,
I recuse.
yeah, I know. Oh, hold on 1 second. So yes is Caroline Fannin, Carol Seehoff, Lisa Johnson, Chris Naren, and Leslie Kretz, right? And recuse themselves is Megan Vestman and Wendy Canestro. So the motion carries 5-0. Can I have a motion to amend the agenda to add agenda item?
Are we voting? I think we just voted to amend that to the agenda. I don't think we actually voted on the actual item.
You are so right. Can I have a motion for agenda item 2A1? Thank you.
Motion.
Second.
So that I think was Caroline again
Yes.
and Chris again. Thank you. Now we're actually going to have a vote for that item. That's what I thought, yeah.
We vote yes to amend the agenda. I vote yes. I don't know what you do,
Okay.
Megan. I vote yes.
Okay. Now we're going to have a motion for the actual item 2A1. So it's Caroline Fanning, Chris Naren. So now all those in favor of agenda item 2A1?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So now it's Caroline Fanning, Carol Seehoff, Lisa Johnson, Chris Naren, and Leslie Kretz. And then Megan and Wendy recuse themselves.
Recuse, yeah.
Recuse. So the motion carries 5-0. Now let's try this again. We have a motion for agenda item to amend the agenda to add agenda item 2A2, which is a resolution denying transportation appeal in regards to confidential A, whereas the Board of Education received and considered a transportation appeal from the parent of the students listed in confidential Schedule A. Be it resolved, the Board of Education hereby denies the transportation appeal and authorizes the district clerk to issue a decision letter to the parent on behalf of the Board of Education. Can I have a motion to amend the agenda to add this resolution?
So
So,
moved.
second.
That's Carol Seehoff and Wendy Canestro, all those in favor of amending the agenda to add this resolution?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 7-0. Can I actually have a motion for the vote on this resolution 2A2?
Motion.
Chris Neering,
Second.
Caroline Fanning?
The motion is to support the denial, is that correct? I don't have the motion in front of me.
Yes, so
Okay.
once again, it says, whereas the Board of Education received and considered a transportation appeal from the parent of the students listed in confidential A. Be it resolved, the Board of Education hereby denies the transportation
Okay.
appeal and authorizes the district clerk to issue a decision letter to the parent on behalf of the Board of Education. You're welcome. So all those in favor of this?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 7-0. Thank you for your patience on that. Now, is there any community input at all regarding the budget that was presented? I would say the initial budget.
Hi, good evening, Danelle Cronin, Amityville. Just a quick question in reference to, because it was indicated that transportation is such a budget driver. If New York State, according to their law, indicates that students are bused within a certain mileage from K to 8 and then 9 through 12, do we follow that guideline or do we make up our own guidelines?
Go ahead, Dr. Talbot.
Good evening, and thank you for your question. Past practice has been for many, many years in Amityville to have a mileage limitation eligibility, which was less than the state's threshold. I don't know those numbers offhand, but I do believe it's pre-K through 2 is a half mile. And then 3 through 5 and 6 through 8 and 9 through 12 have different mileages.
Okay, I understand that.
Right.
That's a written policy past practice. We're talking about people that have to include an equalization rate. We're talking about a huge driver. We're talking about transporting pre-K students, which are not required by law. Why are we not following New York State guidelines? Why are we making up our own rules?
It's mandated, and it
So
was
let-
prior,
no,
Dr.
Ms.
Talbot.
It's not
Cornetto,
mandated.
Yeah.
I think Dr. Talbot was going to answer the question. Go ahead.
So we've had several conversations about this, and some of our own inquiries to the transportation companies have been around the cost for pre-K. And we're still trying to just double down, confirm. So the way that the contract is designed is that you are contracting drivers on a per hour basis. For example, 4-hour slots, 5-hour slots, 7-hour slots. Those are examples. So if your pre-K students are being picked up and dropped off during that 4-hour slot, there's no additional charge to the district. So if the high school students are saying being picked up at 6 a.m., and if the pre-K students are dropped off by 10 a.m., then you fall into that window of no extra cost. Now, in terms of the mileage eligibility, we are looking through the records. We have been talking to long-term employees who have been employed for many years to determine how this decision was made about our mileage limitations. We have been looking for voter referendums. We have consulted other legal firms who were in the district prior to the legal we have now. And we are still in the research phase of that.
So my understanding is there should be a legal referendum indicating these. You're not going to tell me that a law firm who has represented this district does not have that information. I just would be very hard pressed to believe that a law firm does not have that.
So we are still researching that. We are still in the process of trying to confirm where that document or information is housed, who has it. And so that's where we are.
Okay, so if my understanding is, now I've lived in this community many years, there has never been, and if the New York State guidelines is 2 miles, there has never been a time where we've come to a school district and say, yes, I want that to be the rule. So if New York State is saying 2 miles, why are we not following that? We follow every other New York State mandate. Why is this one different?
We've been following what has been in print, or Amityville, what has been in print.
But
But
that's
it's
not the law.
But
That-
it's not been it has not been confirmed to be policy, or we have not located a referendum that supports it.
And how much longer are we going to research that?
We only have a short window of time.
Correct. I mean, I want the best for the kids in this school district, but the taxpayer is absorbing a lot, and the whole equalization rate has only added to this. And if the window of time for the pre-K students are outside of that window, I know there are many districts on Long Island that do not provide transportation for pre-K liability purposes, and because frankly, they can't afford it. So I think that's something that would be very important to look at, to make sure that children are safe in their buses, and the fact that the taxpayer would be represented appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Margaret Schaff. Quick question on again, the transportation. So maybe I didn't hear clearly enough, but the RFP.
Excuse me, can you just repeat your name because we have a new
Margaret
district
Schaff,
clerk?
Amityville.
Yeah.
SHUFF,
Thank you.
surely. So my question is, the RFP went out, and is this figure based on a hypothetical, or this is, I see the notation where neighboring schools are getting double-digit increases, what have you, and you're using that as a guidance. But double digits to me is like 11%, 12%, and then I see 31%. So my question is, where are you getting this 31%, and where is this new figure coming from? Is it hypothetical, or is the RFP come back? Like, I
No,
missed
the-
that
the
part of
RFP
the
has-
conversation.
The RFP hasn't gone out yet, but we met with the current transportation.
Just speak more to the.
We met with the current vendor, and that's the indication that they gave us. In addition to that, we call school districts that have issued an RFP the last couple of years, and that's the indication that we got. Because our RFP, as I said, came out before COVID,
Right.
and that was 5 years ago, so.
So how many vendors are there? Like, so how many RFPs do you put out?
It's one RFP, and we send it to, it's one RFP which is sent to various vendors that provide transportation. There are various vendors on the island. There are about 5 or 6 big
Right,
vendors on the island,
Right.
yes.
so they all come back with the figure?
We haven't issued it
When-
yet.
When
It's
you
being
do
re-
it, when
yes.
you do it, how many numbers do you get back from different vendors?
I can't predict that, I'm sorry. Yes,
It
it could be
varies.
1, 2, 3. Because it has to be cost effective for the vendor too. They have to have a yard which is close by, because it
Right.
will be very difficult
Yep.
for somebody from South Huntington to come here. So they
Right.
also have to, and they have their,
I just was wondering
Customers,
how
yes.
many choices you get. You don't know that until it comes back.
Yes.
Basically. So not everyone is even going to bid on it because it wouldn't be feasible, correct?
exactly.
Got it. And my other question was, what constitutes BOE district clerk and district meeting? What is that? What does that cost? Like, what does that constitute? The
Where
130
it says,
The first
Oh.
line, the first line,
where it says, hold on. I pulled it.
134,005.
It's probably the salary of the district clerk, the full-time district clerk, along with any board of education expenses. That's what I'm assuming. But when we go to do the line by line,
No, I'm just asking for,
I'm just saying, I'm assuming
But
that,
that's a lot, that's a lot.
yeah, I'm just assuming it could be the,
Right.
For
That's like-
134,500.
correct.
It's a
That's what I just-
combination of the Board of Education expenses as well as the district clerk. And the monies to the election, the election
Election,
workers and,
okay.
the voting machines and all that.
Election, these meetings, security,
Correct,
whatever,
correct,
right?
correct, correct.
But the increase of 14.4, what does that constitute?
Oh, it's because we are, and that's what is going to come when we do the line by line.
I will be there
We're
at the line by line.
Okay, it was the iPad for the voting last year we had $6,000 budgeted for iPads for the budget vote. And now we are bringing it back. It's something that the body has to look at when we do go through the line by line. That's really part of it.
So 14 grand in iPods for one
No,
day?
no, no, it's only 6,000.
Say it again?
It's $6,000.
Oh, and that's, and plus the increases in whatever.
Correct,
Thank
correct.
you.
Any other comments, community input? Okay, also, as for the budget presentation on March 1st, let's really make sure that we advertise really well and blast out that way that there'll be a March 1st budget presentation line by line. Because, I mean,
interpreters.
to get it out that way to the community, so therefore the community knows that this is taking place, because it's something that's really very informative, and it allows for the Board of Education to have these discussions and to be able to go back and forth. So it's something that's very informative. It sometimes does not always allow for the community to provide input, but it does allow for a lot of dialogue between the Board of Education and all the trustees, as well as the cabinet. Oops, and your microphone is dying, right?
I have one more
And so,
question.
and also to advertise for, interpreters as well.
Quick question. Didn't we have a budget committee? Is that
Yeah.
still intact?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
And, okay, so they don't, they're not, are they here?
So there's going to be a report, and I think Dr. Talbot spoke about it in her budget presentation. It was the CBC, Citizens Budget Committee. So they're going to be presenting to the board in, I believe it's in March. Yes, and
And-
some of the members are here tonight.
Okay, so how many meetings have they had since its institution?
I think three, go
3
ahead.
meetings, and we had one yesterday,
And how many members are there?
about 18.
And you meet once a month, right? Or once every other month? How's it go? I forget what,
It's about once every month, yes,
once a month.
yes.
And, okay, and did they have input into this so far or not yet at all? Like, I don't understand how that, what's that comprised of? For the
We
they
have
said
been
input,
discussing it,
Just what's here.
yes.
Far.
Excuse me.
And are they required to come to the budget meetings?
No, there's no requirement, but some of them do come here every board meeting. I've
Yeah.
been seeing some of them, and in fact, some of them are here right now.
Okay, well, great, thank you. But I think it's, as a resident and a taxpayer, I think it's absolutely appalling at the attendance of this meeting. I am shocked, chagrined, I am appalled that people do not give a crap about the taxes that we're paying. It's sad beyond words.
Thank you. Yeah, just go ahead and go to Mike. Just give your name to her.
Diane Eglinger from Amityville. I just wanted to clarify one thing, and it's going back to the transportation. If we find this referenda, this memo or whatever from Gercio and Gercio about voting on changing the mileage, is it in the board's wishes to put a memorandum out to change it back to what the state says we should have to save us money? Because like we said, time is of the essence. So I'd like to hear tonight how the board feels about correcting that situation in order to decrease the transportation cost.
So
Why can't we discuss it right now?
I mean, it shouldn't be a big discussion. It would be going back to what is legitimate, and it would save us a lot of money. So I don't see where the big discussion should be, and it should be decided tonight
Yep.
because you do have a time factor where you have to decide, make the memorandum, the
It's a referendum.
referendum, put it in the newspaper, do all that jazz.
Well,
from what I
well,
remember.
if there isn't a voter referendum, if there wasn't a certified one, if they don't find it and there isn't one, we are automatically at the statute of 2 miles for K through 8
So
and
you
3
don't have
miles
to put it
9 through
out.
12. If there's no voter, certified voter referendum, that's where we're at. We wouldn't have to do anything. If we wanted to change the mileage, you know, to make it tighter, then that would be, have to be a referendum.
So
So
can
we
I-
really need an answer if we find this or not.
So can I just ask the question that I have, for example, what is the mileage? Let's just say from, and I'll go both directions. What is the mileage from, let's say Jefferson Avenue and North Amityville to the high school, right? And then we can go the other direction. What would be the mileage from Ocean Avenue, right, to Northwest? Like what is that mileage? So my question is this, and
Yeah, if you
yeah,
Google
we
it.
have to find out, because my question is this: if we're talking about 2 miles, right, that someone has to be more than 2 miles to get busing. So that means for someone who lives on Ocean Avenue that goes to Northwest, I don't think that's 2 miles. So that means that parents or guardians are going to have to get their kids to school every single day. That will also mean it will impact individuals who have to work and everything. So I'm just putting out that way. I think it's something that we have to really think about, that what is, you know, I don't think there's any, and I may be wrong, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but my question is, what is the mileage?
We got to find that out.
And I think, what is the mileage from both
Jefferson.
directions? So because if that's the case, then that means there really probably wouldn't need to be any busing. And if it's 3 miles to the high school, if it's 3 miles to the high school, I don't think there's really anyone in the Anvil district that's going to need a bus.
And that's one of our largest expenses.
Right? So Jefferson Avenue on Google to Amityville High School is 2.7 miles.
There you go.
And that's not, so that's 3 miles. They need 3 miles. So that means everyone that's, you know, up that, in that direction won't get.
Listen,
So I'm just saying, we
I'm
have
up
something to think
here.
about, yeah.
I have grandchildren in the district. Right now, they're bused. And if my daughter-in-law knew I was up here saying this, she'd probably take a gun to my head. But in the world that we live in and the expenses that we are accrued, we have to do something to get that budget down. So if the transportation can be adjusted to a quite a bit amount, the board is obligated, I think, to do that. Yes.
So, and I,
Because, I mean, I understand everybody has problems. Everybody, you know, if you want to get your kid to school, somehow you're going to get your kid to school. Everybody has issues. Both my daughter and son both work. So here, grandma would probably be bringing the kids to school. So I'm really up here putting a gun to my head. But in reality, these are the things you have to do in today's world. And I really think it's 60 days. Isn't it 60 days that it has to be done before, or it could be 90?
we'll confirm it,
But
and we'll definitely know.
I
by
know
the
it's
26th.
close in order to get something on the ballot.
I think mid-March we have to do it.
So I really think a decision has to be made. We can't just sit back and say, well, time is of the essence. Yeah, we'll look into it. If Gercio and Gercio doesn't have that paperwork, they should have everything.
Well, the district should have
They-
it,
they-
really.
they may- yeah.
A voter referendum, a certified voter referendum should be, you know, you have to keep district records for 55 years. We should have it.
And the problem is right
And
now.
Gercio and Gercio should
Right
have
now,
it,
the
yeah.
problem, it can't be found. So for me personally, I cannot say right now tonight that, yes, I want to go back to 3 miles and 2 miles. I just want a little bit more information about what would really be the impact, like how wide does this go? And that's just, I just want to find.
And we
out. So-
can't just look at the emotional impact. We have to look at the financial impact.
Right, and I want to know the mileage before I make a decision.
But
on-
before March
I
1st,
ask-
Lisa?
The next time that we have the 26th, we
the
have a meeting, we
26th?
can have a little bit more meeting, we'll have hopefully more information then, but then by March 1st,
Yeah.
we need to make a decision.
Right.
Can I ask something?
Thanks.
Does that conversation impact our ability to put out the RFP?
That's
What?
something that yes, you're right. We have to talk to.
And what sort of timeline do we put on the RFP for the response? Is it a month?
The last one was done June of that year. So we are a little bit early, but it's always better
I'm
to go
sorry.
out early.
Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, you're saying we're not gonna put the RFP out during budget season so that we know the
Oh,
real
we have
pri-
to.
Oh,
Yeah,
so when you
now
put-
with council.
What's the timeline of the response, I guess is my question.
We always give about 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Yes.
So we'll know before.
So we need, but how do you, I haven't read the RFP.
Mhm.
How is it written?
But you know, we know,
Can we wait to make the decision on the mileage? Or is that gonna impact your ability to put out the RFP for transportation?
It will impact our ability
Okay,
to
so
put
we
out.
have to make the decision on the 26th.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Last community input let's, can I,
And when you're doing the referendum and you're figuring out the mileage and doing all that, it would affect how many hours you need the buses. 2 hours, 4 hours, 7 hours. Do we need 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon? That would all affect how much money you're spending. So one falls upon the other, and it has to be done in a timely fashion, like within the next couple of weeks.
thank you.
Zakiya Wolf, 100 Avalon Court, Melville. Good evening. Uh, Very important conversations as it was involving transportation. It is something that the district should be looking at very carefully to make sure that we are transporting those individuals who qualify for that. I think one of the things that people should and is important to realize is number one, what the practice has been. The other piece is that I believe we just had, I think it was trustee Caroline who said something about the distance, or someone said it was about 2.7 miles. Someone on the, oh, sorry, Megan, trustee Megan said it was about 2.7 miles. So if the mandates or the regulations are 3 miles, then who's getting on the bus? That's going to impact our funding, because if kids don't have access to transportation to get to school, everybody doesn't have the same resources. And I understand that we live in a day and age where people have to try to find a way to make things work. But if we don't have kids in schools, then we're not getting any state funding. So that's going to have a significant impact on that, talking about it from a budgetary standpoint. The other thing is that since we are looking at this, I think that it's probably time that the district should consider your own fleet. We're a small school district. Having your own fleet of buses would significantly decrease transportation costs. You can set your own mileage based off of, whatever kids that we have that, may need to go to charter schools, or the kids that are here in the school district. That would be a significant cost savings. Yes, you're going to have to find areas, you're going to have to get a bus depot and all the rest of those things. But over the course of time, the district would realize savings as it relates to transportation. But it cannot be overstated that if we were to change the mileage, and I guess you probably would have to find a sweet spot to make it more palatable for all of the residents who are responsible for paying taxes. We have to realize that part of that financial piece is our state funding, which means kids have to be in the classroom. And if they can't get here, then we don't get that money.
And just one last final point before we adjourn, just as a reminder to everyone that if we go back to the state mandate for the transportation guidelines for the mileage, that this impacts both public as well as parochial school, which is St. Martin's. So it impacts both schools, which means that the kids who attend St. Martin's would adhere to the same guidelines as with the kids who attend the public school. Yep. All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:37?
So moved. Second.
Hold on. Winnie Canestro is first. Carol Seehofer second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0.